What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, another live stream. And as you can tell from the title, I am here joined with Rashad G Reviews as we're discussing the Indiana Jones films. There are 4 films in this franchise. I know Rashad immediately was going to say there's only 3, and we're going to be talking about each and every single one. If you've never seen the Indiana Jones films, whether you're watching this live or you're watching this after the fact, I'll go ahead and say that you probably should not be watching this if you've never seen Indiana Jones, because we are going to talk about these films. Spoilers, nothing holding us back. We're just going to go for it. Before we get too far into it, Rashad, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, bro. Doing good. Happy to be here. Talking Dr. Jones, okay? You can't call him by his first name. It's Dr. Jones. All right, put some respect on his name. All right. So yeah, I'm ready to go, man. Feeling good. Let's do the damn thing.
For sure. But before we get too far into it, I do want to say a big thanks to anybody who's watching this, whether it's live or you're watching this after the fact. We just wanted to talk about these movies right ahead of the release of the 5th film in the franchise, The Dial of Destiny, directed by James Mangold. It's coming out in just a number of days at this point, and I'm excited for it. Before we get too far into it, I wanted to talk a little bit about our history with Indiana Jones, because for me, when I look at what was some of the pivotal stuff for me falling in love with film, it is, when I think about it, it's so funny. It was the same creators, really, in a lot of ways, but it's the Indiana Jones original trilogy and the original Star Wars trilogy and the prequel trilogy, which was coming out as I was like 6 years old. So the original 6 Star Wars movies and the Indiana Jones films for me were absolute pivotal films in me being who I am today. Like, I wouldn't be the film fan that I am today without these movies. And so rewatching these movies to do this video was just like the most comforting thing in the world, and just put the biggest warmth in my heart. So what about you, man? What did these movies mean for you when they were coming out back in the day? Obviously, you're a little bit older than me, so you got to experience them a lot more like in the forefront of the mainstream, which is something I kind of envy that I didn't get to really experience. But by the time I was growing up as a kid, these things were already big movies, and I got to just completely just run that VHS tape straight into the ground.
Well, first of all, thank you for putting some respect on my name and saying I'm a little older than you, because a lot of everybody in our group is a lot younger than me. So y'all constantly remind me how old I'm getting, and I'm not getting any younger. So it just gets worse day by day. But
yeah. I mean, hey, man, you just real quick, okay. A little bit over a week ago, you indoctrinated me in to the old man geezer squad, because I just turned 30 years old. And yeah, you're not really that. How old are you?
I'll be 44 in 2 months.
Yeah, man, you're really not that much older than me. You know, like, I mean, it is in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, I meet kids that are now 10 years younger than me, 10, 15 years. Right. And I'm like, oh, you guys don't even know about the things back in my day. But yeah, it's like, you're not that much older than me. But anyway, go ahead. Let's hear about your journey with Indiana Jones.
Yeah, so I was introduced, of course, as a young kid. I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark on HBO. I can't tell you how many times, man. So that movie is just so iconic and just engraved in my brain. And then Temple of Doom, I was introduced on pay-per-view. That's when pay-per-view was like making a big splash. And I don't even know if pay-per-view is even a thing anymore when it comes to movies. I think you just would rent it on YouTube or whatever now. Right. But back then, pay-per-view got the movies before the video stores even got it. So once it left the theater, a couple months later, yes, you can now watch Temple of Doom on pay-per-view. I'm like, Daddy, it's only $10. Rent it on pay-per-view. So yeah, my pops must have rented that movie for me like I don't know how many times. Now, Last Crusade, I didn't appreciate till I got older. So I tell the story all the time. Last Crusade, actually, I walked out of. It was me and a group of my friends. We were like 10 years old, and the theater was showing Temple of Doom, Jason Takes Manhattan, and I forgot the third movie. So about 15 minutes into Last Crusade, we're like, this shit's boring, man. Let's get out of here. Let's go watch Jason instead. So that's what we did. So for a while, I didn't watch Last Crusade, but then when I finally did watch it, I fell in love with this. So yeah, this is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. Have nothing but fond memories of it. And even when you rewatch them now, they age like a fine wine. I mean, besides some sketchy green screen and some absurd stuff that happens in there, but the movie those movies age so well, and I love all 3 of them.
Yeah, man. I think I totally agree with you there, man. And it's a similar experience, right? Because obviously you grew up with these movies in theaters, but like, man, as a kid, dude, I can't even tell you how many times I just threw that VHS in and watched these movies. It's countless times, especially Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom, because similar to you, The Last Crusade was always my least favorite film of the trilogy.
Mm,
But as I got older, I just grew to appreciate it more and more. I always enjoyed it as a kid. I always did. I also used to watch the Young Indiana Jones Adventures as well.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, without a doubt, I think that the trilogy is easily one of the greatest trilogies of all time. Which is often why I'm so frustrated with the reaction around the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which we will get into in a little bit.
Okay.
I can say this for anybody who's maybe concerned that I'm saying it's a great movie. I do think it's the worst of all of the Indiana Jones films, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it has more merit than people give it credit. But with that said, really quickly before we get too far into this, just want to say a quick shout out. Hey to everybody who's dropping hellos in the comments. Really appreciate.
All right, what's good? What's good, fellas?
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Jason Hill Millennial is saying that Rashad doesn't recognize the fourth film. He does not. You're correct.
Jason knows what's up.
Thanks for sticking around for a little bit, Mike. Really appreciate it. And thanks for calling me old. Really appreciate that too. So without further ado, man, let's get into the first film, Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Mm-hmm.
directed by Steven Spielberg, of course, with writing credits going to George Lucas as one of the main writers who would stay on for all of these films. John Williams doing the score for these films, which of course, just like the early Harry Potter films or the Star Wars films or the Jurassic Park films, I mean, just iconic. I mean, you can't think about Indiana Jones without thinking about that iconic John
Mm-hmm.
Williams score. It's without a doubt one of the greatest elements of this entire franchise that gets you gripped. And for me, the moments of watching the newest trailers for these movies that made me feel something were hearing that John Williams score and knowing that
He's
he
the
wrote
goat. He's the
a
goat,
whole
man.
new score. He wrote a whole new
Yeah.
score for another Indiana Jones film. We live in a time where John Williams was able to come back and he scored, all 9 main Star Wars films. He scored the Indiana Jones films. I would love for there to have been a newer, like the latest Jurassic Park. I think
Mm-hmm.
it could have been way better for sure. But like, I would have loved for John Williams to come back and score a Jurassic Park. I feel like that would have been amazing. But it's neither here nor there. Love his work in this film. And yeah, man,
Mm-hmm.
Raiders of the Lost Ark for a long time was my second favorite in the Indiana Jones trilogy. And today I'm happy to say that I think it's my favorite, man. It is for
Okay.
me the best film in the franchise. Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, top notch. The opening, the whole opening sequence with the rolling ball and getting the golden idol and just all of that, getting the hat from under the door that's crushing, using the whip. Like, they establish everything about Indiana Jones in that first opening shot of the movie or opening
Mm-hmm.
sequence. It's fun, it's energetic. They set up his fear of snakes. Just everything about that first 10 or 15 minutes for me is perfect cinema.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, man? What do you think about Raiders of the Lost Ark to get this started?
I feel exactly the same. Just a perfect film. Like, I think it kind of really not only resurrect the action genre, but like take it, like raise the bar for it. Where, okay, this is the standard now for action films. We can't go back to Dirty Harry and Death Wish and stuff like that. Like the gritty, dark, French Connection. We can't go back to that dark stuff. Now this is the new standard for action. So Raiders of the Lost Ark really raised the bar. And so after that, everything after that, until Rambo came out, it had to be like Raiders of the Lost Ark. So yeah, damn near perfect film. I have almost no flaws. Now, of course, I collab with Dave from Interpreting the Stars on this, right? Dave brought up a point that now I can't unsee it, but he said that if you take away Indiana Jones from this movie, it changes nothing about the outcome of what happens. And at first, you think blasphemy. What are you talking about? And he says, well, think about it. When they opened the Ark, Indy, he was tied up. He had nothing to do with that. So whether he was there or not, they were going to be hard-headed, open the Ark, everybody face melts, problem solved. I said, Dave, damn it. It is, as much as I wanted to be like, man, shut up. I'm like, damn, you got a point.
Yeah, I guess in the sense of the like the villains, right? Like, it doesn't change anything for them, but they
Right.
probably would have never found the Ark if it wasn't for him, like going to see Marion and all that stuff, and them
Right.
discovering that whole tomb, that where they find it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they would have found it eventually, but you can't remove him from this movie and it completely be the same. But
Yeah.
I do get what he's saying. In the end, the villains still get it and they still open it.
Yes, we had to, and also I want to say too, this is like one of the first action heroes where he's not a super tough guy, like unlike Arnold and Sly and even Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is like unbeatable in his movies. You know what I'm saying? If you see him in a bad guy, it's going to be a bad day for the bad guy. But you watch Indiana Jones in this movie, he gets his ass handed to him a few
Yeah,
times.
that's one of my favorite things about Indiana Jones in general is that
Mhm.
him as a character, he does get his ass whooped quite a bit. And this in this movie and in Temple of Doom, as we'll discuss in a little bit, he's
Mhm.
definitely a lot of moments where he's getting his ass kicked for sure.
Right.
Which definitely a huge plus. I really wanted to take a moment to highlight as well. I mentioned that George Lucas was one of the main writers, but you also have Lawrence Kasdan, who worked on
Mhm.
the original Star Wars trilogy, most notably things like Empire Strikes Back. Would later end up writing things like Solo, a Star Wars story, as well as The Force Awakens. I believe he wrote on The Force Awakens, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and then Philip Kaufman as well helped write
Mhm.
the first film. But yeah, man. So as far as the casting goes, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones. What else can be said about it? It's perfect. Like this is when I think of Harrison Ford, I always think of him like that, like this, and it's hard to see him get old, man. Like it's he's one of
Yeah.
those stars for me that means so much to me, of course, because of Star Wars, but also because of Indiana Jones and so many other movies that seeing him like age,
It's
it's heartbreaking,
heartbreaking.
man.
Yeah,
Because
bro.
even watching Kingdom of the Crystal Skull,
Yeah.
rewatching that, like he looks older, but man, he looks so much younger than he does now, and now he looks really old, and it's
Yeah.
it's 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 painful, man, to see our heroes getting old and these action stars, Stallone and Arnold and all these guys. It really is. It's painful, man. What were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say that's why I'm contemplating whether I'm gonna watch it or not, bro. Because I said this on Mike's stream. I said that watching Harrison Ford age like this in this new movie is almost like watching Muhammad Ali in his last fight. You know what I'm saying? You remember Ali as the Ali shuffle, knocking people out, talking trash, and being the greatest. And then he steps in with Larry Holmes, and you see that damn, he's old. He's mortal. You know what I'm saying? Like he could be hurt, and when somebody's your hero and you see a hero age like that, kind of messes with you a little bit. So I just have just very fond memories of Harrison Ford playing that role and how cool he was. Like Harrison Ford's got to be one of the coolest white men ever walked this earth, man.
Oh
You
yeah,
know what I'm
dude.
saying? Yo, it's as cool as Billy D. Williams is, right? Billy D. Williams, who back then everybody wanted to give him the drawers. Harrison Ford held his own with him. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
So yeah, I'm contemplating whether I even want to watch this last one or not, bro. I just want to remember Indy like in his glory the way I remembered him.
I mean, hey, man, I can't take that away from you for sure. I think
Yeah.
that the one thing for me that actually has me the most intrigued about what they're going to do with his character is I saw an interview with Harrison Ford saying that in this movie, one of the things that intrigued him the most about coming back to do it, and part of the reason he came back to do it, was addressing his age. Well, you
Mm.
can see in the trailer, he tells his, I believe it's supposed to be like his goddaughter, that he's retiring. And the movie itself apparently addresses his age and how he's not really fit for this anymore. And that's part of the narrative. So I'm curious to see how they tie that all in. Of course, the trailer has a bunch of action and crazy stuff going on too. So I still expect him to do some pretty ridiculous things. But yeah, man, it is hard to see, man. Just seeing him on like the red carpet. I just think about him
Yeah.
like in his 40s and 50s, just kind of being this like older, just smooth, like very
Hmm.
quick, like witty guy, and he still has that. He still has that
Right.
that humor to him. But he's old, and it's just crazy.
You just
Crazy.
you don't buy the fact that he can still be Indiana Jones. You know what I'm saying? And
That's the problem.
and another thing I fear about this movie, bro, with this fifth one, I know we got to get back to the trilogy, but one thing I fear too, I said I hope they don't pull the Toy Story 4 route where Bo Peep was like the hero and Woody kind of took a back seat and became the damsel in distress. Like, don't do that, man. You know what I'm saying?
I
Because
really hope that's not the case either, because I like the actress. I can't remember her last name right now, but Phoebe something, I believe, the actress who's
yeah.
playing his goddaughter. I I like her as an actress,
Mhm.
but I just hope that I hope for her sake too that they didn't go that
Don't
route.
do that.
I
Don't do
I
that.
have
Yeah.
faith in the movie just because it's being directed by James Mangold, who of course did like Ford v Ferrari, and he did
Hmm.
Logan. Very very solid director here,
Right.
who I have a lot of faith in as a creator. So I'm at least hoping more than anything that like just that level of talent coming from the vision will would just make for a solid movie. You know what I'm saying? He handled like the Logan thing too. Like,
Oh
like
yeah.
he's old and like decrepit in that movie and he can't
Hmm.
do half of the things he could, but the movie and the story was still so impactful. So I'm just
Yeah,
hoping that we can get
and he
something
still
similar.
gave Logan his dignity. You know,
Right.
when he had that berserker rage, I think that's one of the first times we've seen Wolverine have a berserker rage on film, and I love that. But please don't give us that whole "Hey, I got you." No, I got you. Don't do that shit, man. I hate when movies do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I'm the hero. I'm gonna save you. No, I'm woman. I'm gonna save you. All right, fuck out of here.
I expect at least one moment like that. As just as
Yeah.
long as that's not the movie, I am with you. Beyond Harrison Ford, though, this film also has a great cast of supporting people. With
Hmm.
one of the most notable ones, of course, being Karen Allen as Marion, who's just great, man. And rewatching the original, this guy's crazy. That's another one who's crazy to see her getting older, because I saw her on like the red carpet, and she's like an older woman now. And I remember being a
Hmm.
kid, man, and I thought Marion was just
Yeah.
everything I wanted in a woman back then. Like she was like snarky, and like the scene where she's drinking,
Hmm.
with the guy going back and forth.
Right. Right.
I just was so into her as an actress and as a character, And she's an actress that I can't really pinpoint like a bunch of roles I've seen her in, but when it comes to this, like I've seen her in
Yeah.
plenty of other movies, but like when it comes to this performance, like this is what I think of her. And man, it's just she was just so sexy at the time to me, man. Like growing up as a
She
kid,
was.
like just
Yeah.
watching that movie every time, even rewatching it this time, I'm just like, damn, bro. There's something about her smile and that snarky attitude that's
Right.
just like, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, you kind of wanted to smack Dr. Jones a little bit because it's like, bro, how did you fuck up that relationship? You know, because
Right.
he spent the whole movie trying to get her back because I guess he well she was young when he got with her, so I don't know if that was statutory rape or not, but he got with her as a kid and I guess kind of fucked her over, so now she's all bitter and he spends the rest of the movie trying to get her back. And I'm like, Indy, bro, you dropped the ball on that one, bro.
Yeah, man, you're not wrong. Yeah, she's pretty great in that movie. Paul
Yeah.
Freeman, of course, who plays Belloc, great villain.
Hmm.
Like a little bit, one note at times. Just like the bad guy, but it's iconic for the movie.
Is Bellick the guy that burnt his hand with the creepy guy with the glasses? Because he used to freak me out.
No, that's I think his name is Tot or Tote. He's played by Ronald Lacey. That guy, yeah,
Right.
like the that Nazi guy. He used to
Yeah.
freak me out too. And those shots of him in that movie, like what
Hmm.
a weird looking dude, but like those shots of him in that movie are so iconic. The scene where he first appears and he's like kind of you see like the way he's wearing the hat, the lighting of the
Right.
shot when he pulls up, perfect. Of course, the shot of his face melting at the end of the movie when they open
Hmm.
the Ark of the Covenant, so good. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I really
That scene
enjoyed
was
the
funny as
casting
shit
there.
too because he was screaming like a female. That shit had me laugh when I watched that. Like when the ghost first appeared, he's like, ah.
Yeah. And
I'm
watching
like,
it today, man, like those effects still really hold up. There's a couple of moments in like those explosion scenes where you can tell when it's like a dummy, 100%.
hmm,
Obviously,
right.
that scene is like a thing they melted. Like it's like it was an actual practical effect that melted, which
Hmm,
is awesome. But there's other
right.
scenes where like there's explosions and you can see like a dummy or a thing pop
Yeah,
up in the corner.
that's why Perez. I'm not really a big fan. I mean, I like Blu-ray. Don't get me wrong, but I think with certain movies, certain old movies, I'd rather watch them in like just 35 millimeter format or just like almost VHS format because like when you watch it that way, it hides its imperfections, you know. But when you
Right.
watch it in Blu-ray, it shows like all the flaws and everything. Like, oh my god,
Right.
that green screen is terrible. Like you say,
Right.
you can see the dummy. So yeah, I think with older movies, like with Avatar, yeah, get it in Blu-ray. But like the Raiders and Temple of Doom and them, nah, I'd rather just watch those. No better than DVD quality. After DVD quality, you see all the flaws and imperfections. I don't want to see that.
Yeah, and I watched them in 4K this time around, and so yeah,
Hmm.
some of those things did stand out. But I would say this,
Right.
man, the benefit that Indiana Jones has, those first three films in particular, is a
Hmm.
absolute beautiful use of practical effects,
Hmm.
locations, costume design, set design, practical effects. Yeah, you might see that guy who just flew across the room is a dummy, but like there's so many moments of the film that still work because they went to locations, they went
Hmm.
places, and that's why like the original Star Wars trilogy works so much, and even parts of the
Right.
prequels where they went back to those locations that they filmed on Tatooine and stuff like that. Like those scenes work because they went to like an actual like physical location that gave the film atmosphere and tone
Mm-hmm.
and feel. And so, yeah, that Raiders of the Lost Ark, I mean, has that 100% when they're in Egypt and all that stuff is going down. Like, like they have the practical locations, and that also adds to the all the stunt choreography and the fights. When Indy's jumping from vehicle to vehicle, or he's like,
Yeah.
hanging off the side of the tank, and his like strap is caught up on it and stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's all moving, it's all practical, it's all caught in camera. It feels visceral, it feels real, and there's just something about it that just like, man, you watch movies like that, and it reminds me why I fall in love with films. And so, it's funny enough though. Recently, I'm covering the Jaws films on my channel,
Mm-hmm.
and for anybody who's been watching the channel, you've probably seen those videos at this point. But when we did Jaws 3, I watched that on 4K Blu-ray, and bro,
Ooh.
it was so terrible looking. It was
Yeah.
so terrible looking because the effects in those movies are horrible. They were horrible when I was a kid on
Yeah.
VHS and straight to TV with the static on the screen. Now they're even worse, bro. Like that
Yeah.
movie with the scene where the shark just is slowly coming towards the screen and
Yeah.
the
It's my
glass
favorite part
cracks
of the
in front of
movie.
it.
Yeah, favorite part of the movie.
Dude, it looks so bad in 4K. Like there's no illusion to anything.
Right.
It's all really bad. Or just even scenes where they're looking out into like the like base where all the water is. You know what I'm saying? They're
Mm-hmm.
looking into the water from that little like hub. It just looks terrible, bro.
Yeah, it was
Terrible.
failed 3D. I mean, I'm interested to see what it looks like in 3D, like actually watch it in 3D the way it was meant to be seen. But I heard even at the time the 3D was terrible. Like even moviegoers
Yeah.
back then was like, yeah, the 3D looks like shit.
It has to be like freaking Friday the 13th 3D. That's
Yeah.
terrible as well. I always think about
Mm-hmm.
Friday the 13th 3D. What I always think about is at the very beginning of the movie, there's like that lady that's putting clothes on the like
Right.
clothesline, or it's her husband before he dies, when he's
Yeah.
outside, and he has like a pole and he's like doing this, and you can like see him like look at the camera and try to line up
Mm-hmm.
the stick, and I'm just like, dude, the old 3D was just so bad, dude. What they were trying to do was terrible. One of the other
Yeah.
main cast members I want to talk about, of course, that we haven't touched on yet, is the character of Salah, played by John Rhys Davies.
Mm-hmm.
Love that he's coming back for the new movie. When I saw him in the trailer, like Give Him Hell, Indiana Jones, like just so awesome to
Right.
see him coming back. So awesome to see these characters return in this way. I'm
It's
wondering,
so
I saw
crazy. Do you know that guy actually played the Kingpin in the Incredible Hulk movie? Yeah.
which Incredible Hulk was it? Bill Bixby?
The trial of the Incredible Hulk. Yeah, he actually played Wilson Fisk.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to check that out again. I haven't seen that movie in
Yeah.
a long time. I will tell you this: as a kid, I used to watch the Bill Bixby Hulk stuff all the time, all the
Right.
time. Now I can't even remember the last time I watched it. Those were some simple days when people are like, "This is the worst comic book movie thing I've ever seen." It's like, you don't
It was
remember
the
the
shit.
era where the
Yeah.
Hulk was wearing, chancletas, when he was out there in straight up like sandals,
Like
like,
Crocs.
yeah, they look
It's
like
like
Crocs.
it's one of the things you had to be there, man. But yeah, when I first saw that, I said, "Wait a minute, that's your boy from Raiders." I said, "Oh,
Right,
shit,
right.
he's playing the Kingpin."
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've always loved him as an actor. I think he's great in the Lord of the Rings movies as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As Gimli. Just
Yeah,
what what
But Raiders was definitely lightning in a bottle, man, and a hard one to top. So, I know about to get to Temple of Doom, but I think Temple of Doom, even though people kind of shit on that movie, but the fact that it's the follow up to Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was a smash hit, and I think held its own with it. You know what I'm saying?
I'd
Like
say so too.
that's a tough act to follow.
For sure. Yeah. So Raiders is still my favorite one, right?
Mhm.
But, and we'll get to our wrapping up our thoughts here on Raiders now, but Temple of Doom was my favorite for a long time, man. And part
Yeah.
of it was because I always liked the darker installments in certain
Mhm.
franchises. My favorite film of all time is Empire Strikes Back, and it's just because
Right.
it was like at the time too, it was like the darker one of the original trilogy. Of course, arguably for sure, Revenge of the Sith is the darkest Star Wars
Mhm.
movie. Kids are getting murdered and shit, but
Yeah.
like that's really what it is. Um, but yeah, like I always love the darker installment into the franchise. But yeah,
But let's
man,
not forget. Raiders was dark as shit too. Now, like think of some of
for
the scenes,
sure.
like the opening scene where your boy had the spike go through his mouth.
All
You
right,
got people faces getting melted. That scene in the bar where they had that shootout. You see people spitting up blood and getting shot. So,
right.
and when he fought the one guy, the big Nazi dude, and the thing, what's
Propeller
that shit
gets him.
called?
The
Yeah.
propeller, yeah.
So yeah, Temple of Doom was dark, but listen, Raiders was dark as shit too. Now.
It was, no, for sure. And it's funny because I mean, I guess that's something that we should touch on because maybe some people don't know, but the Indiana Jones films are the reason that we ended up getting PG-13 because
mm-hmm.
Indiana Jones, and which is crazy when you think about it. A lot of movies came out. A lot of movies came out before, um, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom. It was Temple of Doom that did it. Temple of
Right.
Doom came out, and parents were having problems. People were getting their heart ripped out. You know, there's a part, there's a scene where they're eating like eels outside of snakes' bodies,
Monkey
and there's like
brains.
monkey brains and eyeballs, and you know, there's like kids that are being like thrown into slavery, and like it's got some dark stuff and some heavy stuff. People are getting killed. There's like dead bodies everywhere, and those both Temple of Doom and Raiders of the Lost Ark are rated PG, which is hilarious by today's standard. Those movies would easily be PG-13 in today's world, and that's just how we think about it today. But they didn't have that that wasn't a thing, you know. They just didn't have a PG-13. There was PG, and then it was straight to R. And you know, it wasn't until Temple of Doom that they eventually ended up opening that up as a thing for movies and studios to start doing. You know, the MPA had to, is it MPA? The
MPA, which I believe Red Dawn was like the very first PG-13 movie released, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Because after, which is still crazy to me that Temple of Doom and stuff, even though it started the uproar, the film is still PG. So yeah, there was so many moments when I told my fiance, you know, those facts. She didn't know that when we were watching them, and so as we were watching the first two movies, the whole time she's just like, we're both just like, oh, what a fun for the whole family. Here's a dead guy on the ground with a freaking spear in the back of his throat. It's like, fun for the whole family. PG film.
PG. Would just think, bro. I'm like 5 years old watching it. I think I saw Raiders like at 4, I think, and Temple of Doom came out when I was like 5.
Yeah, and
so,
it had to have been something similar.
Huh?
It had to be something similar for me too, because I was watching these movies super young.
Right,
I can't even remember the first time I watched them.
And if you remember the old HBO intros, right, where they would have the movie of the night and they would do that classic HBO intro, right, that it says, this movie is rated PG by the Motion Picture Association of America. Parental guidance is suggested. Wow. Well, son, you know what? I think you should sit this one out, man. I don't think this shit. My dad was like, man, watch this shit.
Yeah, bro. I do not miss the days of like my parents or my mom or like anybody like, or being at like a family member's house and they're like, oh yeah, you got to stay in the room with the kids. You can't watch this movie. Yeah. It's so funny because like, but funny enough, my dad just popped into the chat. What's up, Pops? How's it going?
What's up, Pop?
But my dad's you know, a huge movie fan, and you know, raised me on things like Rocky, and you know, my dad we used to go like, we'd watch like the old action movies with Arnold and stuff like that, and you know, then we go see the stuff that was coming out. And my dad loves a lot of that stuff, you know, that was obviously for adults or whatever when I was a kid. But it's just so funny. Like my parents both, I grew up in a religious household, so they kept me away from like a lot of like heavy stuff. But now it's like, look at me today. Like I love the craziest stuff I can get on screen, you know.
Well, it's that forbidden fruit, you know, because my father let me watch a lot of stuff too. But when it came to like Elm Street, I remember he brought home Nightmare on Elm Street 2. The second one, I'm like, Nightmare on Elm Street. What is that? They said, no, boy, you can't watch it. Go in the room and play with your Thundercats. Right. I'm like, but I want to watch it. So you can hear the movies playing in the other room, but it's like, damn, I want to watch that, man. Especially Aliens. I walked in on him watching like the end of Aliens where Ripley was fighting the Queen. And I was like, I've never seen anything like that. So that's some coolest shit. I said, Dad, boy, get on in that room. I'm like, hate him.
Right. I can remember a few of those times too. What I always thought was the coolest is if I was ever doing like a family sleepover, like at I don't know, my cousin's house or with my aunt and uncle and something. I was sleeping in the living room and I fell asleep to like, you know, I don't know, Spy Kids or something. But I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and the TV's still on and like Aliens 2 is on and like, you know, Aliens. And I'm just, I just be sitting there with like my eyes like half open, like watching what's going on. Funny times. But yeah, man. Listen, any final thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark? Obviously, for me, the best of all of them. Still, I love the movie, the casting, the music, the action, the practical effects. I mean, top tier.
It's top tier, perfect movie to me. Yeah, Raiders did kind of what John Wick 4 did for action movies right now. I don't care what nobody say. After watching John Wick 4. Action movies will never be the same again because you can't go back after watching that, what you see in John Wick 4. And I think Raiders set that bar back then in 1981 when it dropped, where now you can't go back to the 70s. Like now it's this and better, or else it's gonna fail. So yeah, Raiders, yeah, A+ in my book, man. A++++++. Love that shit.
Amen, amen, amen. Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
Definitely agree on that one. Well, let's move on now to the film that we both said it was a favorite of ours for a long time, Temple
Still
of
my
Doom.
favorite. Still my
So
favorite.
it's still your favorite one?
Still my favorite one.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. This was my favorite one for a while, and is the one that I will say is the first film in the franchise to actually do one of the most ridiculous things that you see in any of these movies, long before Indiana Jones would survive a nuclear explosion inside of a
Yeah.
fridge. Yeah, so this film, once again, directed by Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, of course, in the writing department with Gloria Katz and Willard Huyck. And of course, starring Harrison Ford in the leading role of Indiana Jones, Kate Capshaw as Willie, arguably the most annoying sidekick of the entirety of the franchise, and also featuring one of the greatest sidekicks in the entirety of the franchise, Short Round, played by Ke Huy Quan, who is now just having so much success. And honestly, I've seen people say it online. I would kill for them to do a spinoff of Indiana Jones, just called like the Short Round Adventures. Just bring Ke Huy Quan in now at his age, where he's just trying to live up to Dr. Jones. That would just have been gold. I don't think he's in this new movie, but I bet you there's a part of them after the success of Everything Everywhere All at Once that's kicking them they're kicking themselves in the ass a little bit. But that movie didn't come out a little sooner.
He might have a cameo, a mid-credit cameo. They probably shoehorned it in there real quick just for fan service.
If they did, man, I'm a fan. So service me, give it to me. Yeah. So those are the obviously the main faces here, and yeah, man, I'll let you start off, dude. Tell me about your story with Temple of Doom. First time seeing it. What does it mean to you after all these years?
Yeah, so Temple of Doom blew me away because, like I said, at the time, I couldn't watch the hardcore horror movie. So for me, this was as hardcore as it got. So when your boy, what's his name, Mullaram or whatever, ripped my man's heart out, I was like, so that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Okay. So, all right, I will admit, though, so it's a funny thing. So I always say this is my favorite Indiana Jones movie, and it is. But I will admit that Raiders is a better movie. But just me personally, man, if Rashad, you put a gun to my head, you have to choose one. I'm choosing. It's something about Temple of Doom where it just has that rewatchability for me. It just has that something about it that makes me keep going back to it. You know what I mean? Like that chick where, okay, even though this chick has all the attributes, like she's like a perfect 10. This is the chick that you need to be with. But it's something about this one over here with her imperfections, man, and her flaws that just turns me on, man. I can't get enough of her. That's Temple of Doom for me, man. It's just something about it. I mean, because you can pick this movie apart and everything that's wrong with it. I do not care. Okay, so how can you forgive the raft falling down from the plane and landing and them not fucking exploding? But yeah, you can forgive the nuclear blast in the fridge. You know why? Because when you're invested in a movie, when you're invested in the characters, when they pull you in, you don't care about that shit no more. But when you watch something and like you find yourself tuning out, like I don't really care about this, it's easier to say like, okay, well, I don't like this shit about it because I'm not down with it to begin with, so I don't care about this shit. But from the beginning of the movie, from the opening musical number to that opening action sequence, I was hooked. So after that, I don't care what they did that was ridiculous. I was all in with this movie. It just had a pace that never stopped. Even when the action wasn't going on, it was comedy. You was laughing. So when you wasn't being thrilled, you was laughing. If you wasn't laughing, you was being thrilled. And I don't care what nobody says. Willie, Spielberg married her, so I'm gonna keep it gentlemanly, all right? Because I respect Spielberg. But she was finer than Frog Hair. She was finer than Marion. To be honest with you, I thought Willie was sexy, and her screaming didn't bother me. It actually turned me on.
I listen. I after all these years and having seen this movie a million times, I can definitely say that the character of Willie is just like she's ingrained in the culture of what Indiana Jones is for me. So I do enjoy seeing. There's more of anything. I like how Short Round and Indy deal with her throughout the course of the movie. There's so many great moments of humor because of her. I love the sequence as well where Indy and Short Round end up getting trapped inside that room with all the spikes
Oh
that are
yeah,
coming down,
yeah,
and she's like they're trying to get her to shove her hand in that thing to like it's
right.
just perfect. Like that whole sequence is so great.
It's
And
like,
yeah,
let
man,
me in, let me in, let us out, let us out.
right, right. And dude, the casting is great. The three of them, I think, is just so much fun. There's so much humor in this one.
Hmm.
The Temple of Doom is easily the funniest one, I would say, of the original trilogy, or out of all of them. There's so many moments in the movies that I find genuinely funny. In this
Yeah.
one, um,
And I think I had the
yeah,
best villain too. Like you think of Indiana Jones villains, you don't like Indy doesn't have a catalog of villains like say like Batman or nothing like that. But
right.
you think of Indiana Jones villains, the first thing you think about is that guy with the helmet on with the horns and Gariba, Gariba Shakti Day.
Yeah,
That nigga was scary.
yeah. I know. I feel you. That it's definitely like visually the most iconic villain of all four films. Um,
Right.
but yeah, man, so I have to bring it up.
Hmm.
Them jumping out of the plane in the raft. It's the first time in the franchise that they went absolutely bananas, and I love that people always think about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but really in the end of the day, man, like that is the first time they should have been beyond dead. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they should have
Yeah.
splattered. Number one, that raft should have flipped over midair. They would have
Yeah.
been dead, like
Yeah.
beyond dead. So
Yeah.
stuff like that for me is why I love this franchise. It's not about the perfection; it's the goofiness adds to it. I
Hmm.
noticed right here, my dad actually commented saying that the soldiers falling off the ladder at the end into the hungry alligators, comical. I can never unsee the weak special effects of that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so rewatching it, when that scene came up, that we were all cracking up. It was me, Robert, and my fiance Haley, and we
Mhm.
just were laughing so hard because as soon as they fall down, it's like clearly dummies, and it's literally they use the same shot of the gator
Right,
doing
they
that
kept
death
yeah.
roll with the fabric in his mouth. And there's another sequence right before that where they show Indy like scaling the wall, and it's this
Mhm.
horrible like rotoscope like
Right.
this terrible effect.
Yeah,
So the movie has definitely, I would argue, maybe some worse effects than Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I would
I would
argue
agree.
that Temple of Doom also utilizes better costume design in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
There's the whole sequence with them, like, ripping the guy's heart out, and he goes down there and he's, gets burnt with, it's like, it's a practical dummy that ends up catching fire, and you can tell.
Mhm.
But all of that, the set design and all that kind of stuff is just fun and fantastical and just cool to look at. The one thing that never makes sense to me though is that they rip that dude's heart out. He gets taken down maybe like 3 feet, and my man
Mhm.
like burst into flames. Like he
Yeah.
just combust into flames. Willie is down there screaming for help for like 25 minutes, and it's slowly being rolled down, and she like is
Yeah.
knocked out near the end essentially because she's so drained from the heat, but she
Right.
never catches fire, and she's in this big like frilly white dress. I'm thinking this girl would have caught flame, and that dude
Oh
that was
yeah.
like in like he just had like
A
like
turban.
something, yeah, a turban on his head.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was a turban or if it was a hat, but he had a turban on, and he had like literally just like a little like sash around his
Mhm.
goods, and that was about it, man. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that didn't make any sense, but it doesn't take away from the enjoyment. This movie for me is the perfect, like it's movie magic in the sense that it's just
Mhm.
a fun, dumb, exciting, adventurous ride with great cast members in the middle of it. And
That's
there's so
it.
many moments with Harrison Ford in this movie that just make me think, like, kind of like you were saying before, he was like one of the coolest white men to ever exist. But it's
Yeah.
just like, man, like for the time, like the dude was just like the epitome of a hunk, bro. Just like he just was
Mhm.
like, you know what I mean? Like he just everything about the way he delivered his lines, the way he smiled at people, the way he said lines, just perfect, man. Just he was just
Right.
so perfect for the role.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and you
you
never
know,
see him like really freak out either. Sometimes some heroes in the movie have like that berserk moment, but Indiana Jones never really goes berserk. Well, except where he had to drink that blood and he kind of became like a dark version of himself. What do you call it? The black sleep. So
yeah,
that's
and
like the only
he
time.
literally he gets back to normal after like 3 seconds.
Yeah, and tell me that it kind of gets you emotional a little bit. Where the short round saw him like that, and he's like, "Dr. Jones, I love you. Wake up!" He burns with the fire. See, that shit got you emotional. You dropped your damn camera.
Yeah, yeah, knock the camera over. Yeah, yeah, it's still to this day, man, rewatching the movie, that still got me a little bit, like,
Mhm.
and it's one of those things where it's kind of funny. We laughed right after because he says like literally like 3 times, you know, remember it's me, like don't do
Yeah.
this, blah blah. And then he's like, instantly Harrison Ford's like, You know,
Right.
he's fine, you know, so it's like it's goofy in its own way, but that moment still works, you know. And what I like
Mhm.
about the Short Round and Indiana Jones relationship in the movie is that they don't really give you a lot of context on how they've ever met, but
Yeah.
you understand enough, you know what I'm saying? Like, and you really buy into to that whole situation.
So let
So
me ask
yeah,
you. So do you? Because I know this movie gets a lot of hate for some reason. So do you think the hate comes from just because it's so much darker than the other ones, and
I
it's
think
like
it's also
so?
because it's so goofy in a lot of ways, you know,
Mhm.
like there's stuff like that stuff at the end. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark has a much higher sense of believability
Right. There's a better
overall.
balance there. Yeah.
Right, because it
Mhm.
feels grounded. You know, everything that Indy does himself feels like boots on the ground. You know, like dude who can fight, he can hold his own, but he's also gonna get his ass kicked. You know, like
Mhm.
the grounded practical effects, the locations used, everything about it feels like it feels earthly. You know, it feels human.
Right.
And outside of the end where you have all this, you know, mystical stuff happen with this, you know, obviously this biblical historical artifact that nobody knows what will happen with it. There's a fantastical element that's added to it then, but other than that, the rest of the movie is super like it feels like a human story, you know, it feels like a
Right.
story about an adventurer. Whereas the second movie, while it still has that feeling of a feeling of adventure, of course, you started off with um like a James Bond style,
Mhm.
like over the top, like action sequence where like you're
Right.
running people down in the middle of the streets. And by the way, gotta love that the club that they're in is Club Obi-Wan. Of course,
Obi-Wan.
that's a
Yeah.
long time, like longtime fans know that all these movies pretty much have little Star Wars
Mhm.
nods to them. And Raiders of the Lost Ark, we didn't mention it, but they have the down in that area where they find the Ark of the Covenant. You can see hieroglyphics that look like R2D2 and C3PO.
Yeah. I saw
Um,
that. Yep. Yep.
and then of course in Temple it's Club Obi-Wan. But yeah, you start the movie in like this James Bond-esque kind of way, and then
Mhm.
it turns into this, you know, ridiculous adventure where you're jumping out of a plane on a raft and you survive and you fall into you have a raft that's not built for white river rafting, but you're
Yeah.
in water, white water that's just I don't know if you've ever done white river rafting,
Yeah. I
but
have. Yeah.
it's a lot, man. It's pretty
Mhm.
intense. You
I
gotta be
almost
working
almost
together.
drowned in that shit. Yeah. Almost drowned. Yeah.
Please tell me the story. I need to know. We're gonna dig
Yeah,
deeper.
I wrestled all 4 years in high school, and so at the end of the year, our coach took us up upstate New York to like the woods and shit, and nature and everything. So yeah, I could swim and everything, but I've never been white river rafting before, like the rapids and shit.
Yeah.
So me and my boy, we was on there, doing a thing, and then we got to the rapids part. I started going real fast, and my boy freaked out, so he fell off the raft. So me, I'm like in superhero mode. I have to go save him. And mind you, I have on sneakers too. Don't judge me, man. I had on sneakers doing this. I was able to get him right, so I saved him, got him back on the raft. But guess what? I fell off. So when I fell off, bro, it was the strangest thing because I'm trying to swim up, but the more I'm trying to swim up, the more I feel like I'm being pulled down, and I'm like, fuck, I'm about to die, man. Like I really thought I was gonna die. So I noticed that I said, okay, I think my sneakers are holding me down. So I had to kick my sneakers off, and I was finally able to get up. And mind you, our coach is responsible for us. Like we're kids. My coach was no, I'm about to drown, bro, and my coach is nowhere to be found. I had like survival kicked in, and I was able to, get to shore. But my $120 shoes were gone. Like my shoes, some lucky bastard found them, and I
Oh,
had, I
they're
had,
still
and I
sitting
had,
there today.
yeah. So I had to walk 2 miles back to our destination barefoot. So I'm walking on rocks and all kinds of stuff, man. By the time I got back, I had caveman feet. And that
Yeah,
was my
dude.
first and that was my first only time doing that.
I've only done it once myself. I did it in high school. We went on a trip and similar thing. I was in school, and yeah, man,
Yeah.
they tell you, man, like there's areas like you got to hold on to that boat because
Hmm.
when it starts to get crazy and choppy, there's nothing you can do. If you're gonna get pulled under the water, you almost gotta like let your body just kind of like
Yeah.
float with the water, so you just kind of roll out. But
Right.
all that to say, we both have had experiences with white water. It's not
Mm.
easy. Okay. Like
No. No.
the water is thrashing and pooling, and you got to have the right kind of boat and you got to be
Right.
working together to paddle and stuff at the right times. And I'm
Hmm.
sure it was the same thing where they tell you to paddle at a certain time, then they tell you to not paddle. It's a whole thing.
Right.
They should have been dead
Yeah.
in Temple of
Yeah.
Doom, 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, like why do people hate it? I think it's because it's got stuff like that, and then it has this big fantastical part of it with people's hearts being ripped out. And I think that
Hmm.
when it comes to Indiana Jones, I've just noticed that most people enjoy it when it's grounded, but at the same time,
Yeah.
the franchise has always been fantastical, right? Like Last Crusade is, and we're going to get into that in a moment. Last
Hmm.
Crusade is super, super grounded for 97% of the film. Of course, they're chasing a historical biblical artifact again, but then in the
Right.
last 15 minutes, you got straight up like a ghost just chilling in the movie, like, yo, what's good? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and so then people are tripping out in the next one, like aliens. I'm thinking, I don't know. We've already
Yeah.
gone pretty far already. Like aliens, I'm okay. That makes a little more sense. I believe in aliens before I believe in heart ripping out rituals.
Yeah, we
Um,
had voodoo heart ripping out rituals, like you said, ghosts and stuff. And even Spielberg disowns Temple of Doom. Spielberg's, I guess, at the time, what I think him and George Lucas were going through a divorce or some shit like that. Like,
like a divorce between the two of them.
I'm saying, well, I think Spielberg and his, I don't know if it was Spielberg or was it Lucas, but one of them was going through like a nasty divorce. I think it was Spielberg.
Yeah,
He was
I
going through a
think
nasty divorce,
right.
and so he said it was like the darkest time of his life, and I guess his actual personal life was like oozing out into his film. So when he thinks back on Temple of Doom, it's his least favorite one. Like he doesn't even like to watch it. But I'm like, bro, that was great, man. I love that.
Yeah, that's always painful to me when I hear like creators that like made something that I love that don't
Hmm.
like listening to it or watching it anymore.
Right.
Like my favorite band just recently put out a new album, and they'll talk about some of their old stuff, because their new stuff is so different from their old stuff, and I love the
Hmm.
old stuff, but I really enjoy the new stuff too. But people always want them to be the old stuff, and they're just like, I don't even listen to that old stuff anymore. Like if we didn't have to play some of it for the fans, we probably wouldn't play
Right.
it at all, which breaks my heart because I'm just like, man, I love that old stuff, but it just, I feel like creative people, kind of like us, I guess, in our own way, like it's not like
Hmm.
we're ever going back and like, let me watch my video for
Oh
this
yeah,
movie from
yeah.
5 years ago. I'm like, somebody else wants to watch it, cool. I'm gonna steer clear of that. But
Right,
wrapping up
right.
thoughts on Temple of Doom, overall, man, a movie that was definitely my favorite of the franchise for a while. I think Raiders
Hmm.
is still my favorite now, but big, over the top, ridiculous, but still fun and has a heart, charm. Short Round is great. The banter
Hmm.
between Indy and Short Round is fantastic with Willie in the mix, and still utilizes great practical effects and has these big fantastical elements and goofy stuff for sure, but never loses
Right.
its charm. What about you?
Yeah,
Rapid
facts,
final
facts.
thoughts on
Yeah,
your end?
yeah. Wrapping it up. Yeah, not a perfect film. So I call Raiders a perfect film. This is not a perfect film, but I do respect its ambition because, like with sequels, especially when you're following the success of the first one, you almost try to copy the formula and be like, okay, what worked in this? Whatever worked in this first movie, we have to duplicate that so we can have success with the second movie. And Temple of Doom is nothing at all like Raiders, man. Nothing. So I respect the fact that they were ambitious enough to go in a totally different route and be his own thing. You know what I'm saying? So you can watch Temple of Doom without watching Raiders. You know what I'm saying? Not be
Right,
confused because they're totally different adventures.
right. And
And
I
now,
believe Temple of Doom is a prequel,
it's a
if I'm not
prequel, yeah.
mistaken.
It's a
Right,
prequel. It came out before. So, Rocky's my favorite franchise, right? So as much as I love Rocky, but I have to admit, Rocky 2 is almost a copy and paste of the first movie. You know what I'm
right,
saying? Like it follows the same exact formula to the T. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, at this point, they're gonna have the training sequence. At this point, we're gonna have the fight, then the outcome of the fight. So it'll be, even though it's not the same movie, but it's the same formula. Temple of Doom doesn't do that. And I like when
right.
sequels can go totally different and not try to be anything like that first movie. So yeah, A+ in my book. I love Temple of Doom.
Yeah, yeah. I was rating these on Letterbox as I was
Hmm.
watching them, and yeah, all the first three movies, I'll just say 5-star movies. Like for
Yeah.
me, 5-star movies,
Hmm.
without a doubt. Like there's just too much about them, and I always take into account what movies were at the time and what these movies were doing for that. And kind of like you said with the sequels, I think you mentioned Rocky. It's a perfect example. Rocky
Hmm.
2 is, I think, a better sequel than some sequels have done that kind of copycat thing. But like you think of
Right.
something like Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters 2 is just Ghostbusters all over
Hmm.
again. And
Hmm.
I still enjoy it, but it's nowhere near as good as Ghostbusters, like regular
Right.
old Ghostbusters. And other franchises have done it. Star Wars has done it in recent years with things like The Force Awakens, which is very
Hmm.
similar, of course, to A New Hope, but also different enough in its own way.
Well, even
Um,
even your favorite sequel, Karate Kid 2, even though they went to Okinawa, it followed the same exact formula as the first movie.
bro, I just did it again. It's a good thing this camera is like sturdy. I was doing a little Danielson action on the camera.
Oh, you
Yeah,
got
no,
like chopping the ice.
yeah. Or what's that? That's that thing that Rob did when we did the Karate Kid stream.
Oh man, what did he do? That should have you rolling, bro. What did he
I think it
do?
was that he was just making fun of how Daniel has that stance at the end of like.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh god.
But yeah, man. Let's get into real quick before we continue on. I saw the View with Drew says Temple of Doom. He thinks it's better than people give it credit for.
Facts.
Totally. Um, let's see. I saw that Blacktastic popped in here too, saying Dr. Jones, Indiana is my favorite character, damn near in cinema history. Definitely feel you on
Facts.
that. And that he saw Raiders of the Lost Ark with his parents opening night,
Lucky
Chinese
man.
theater in Los Angeles.
I was
That's
in
great.
diapers, bro. I'm jealous, man. I was like a baby when that came out.
Cinematic saying, "Sup, you guys watching the new movie Thursday?" Yeah, we did talk about it. He says he doesn't know either. Rashad. Rashad is in the same boat as you are. I
Yeah.
have tickets already, and I cannot wait.
Yeah. I don't
And then
know.
Trav says, "Sup, boys? What's going on, man? Thanks so
Sup,
much,
bro?
and thank you to everybody who's watching. Whether you're watching this after the fact, been watching live, whether you're chiming in the comments or not, we really appreciate it. Also, take a quick moment to say down below description box." Link straight to Rashad's channel. Go give him some love. Let him know I sent you. He covers movies and TV stuff, does episode reviews for certain shows, and even reviews raps. Was it snap raps? Rap snacks?
Rap snacks, yeah.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
reviews everything and anything you can find over there. Without further ado, let's get into our thoughts on The Last Crusade, man. We'll go ahead and throw it over to you first, man. Tell us about what this movie was like for you growing up as a kid and how you feel about it today.
So yeah, like I said, I actually walked out of the theater when I walked out when I first went to see it because it bored me. It bored us. It was like a group of us, so we snuck in and saw Jason Takes Manhattan. We had a much better time. But of course, if you ask me what's the better movie, I'll probably slap you in your face. So I'm like, Jason Takes Manhattan is probably one of the worst sequels ever. But at the time, as a 10-year-old kid, I just wanted to see bodies, dismemberment, and blood. And that's what that movie gave me at the time. Last Crusade, okay, if you ask 10-year-old me about this movie, I would say that it was a step back from Temple of Doom because it wasn't as violent. It wasn't as grotesque as either that or Raiders. So it was like kind of like a watered down version of those movies. This is my thinking at the time. And I watched Siskel and Ebert's reviewing it, right? And I think both of them agreed that even though the movie was decent, you could tell Spielberg really dialed it back as far as the violence goes because of the criticism he got from Temple of Doom.
Right,
so this one is like not like a third as violent as the other one. And they said because that the movie suffered. And also they said that the movie didn't take any chances, didn't take any risks. It played it really safe. And I guess I can understand that criticism. But to me now, it's a fun time. And I personally think it's the funniest of the three. Like, I think Last Crusade made me, especially when him and Sean Connery were together. When it was Sean Connery and Harrison Ford, those two had the best chemistry. Even though I think in real life they're like 10, maybe 12 years apart, but you bought the fact that they were father and son, and you can relate to that, you know what I'm saying? Because as a son, you always want to get validation from your father. You always want to try to please your father, but then you always find out nothing's ever good enough for him, no matter how good you are at something. It's always, oh boy, you could always be better at it. It's like, damn, I can't do nothing to please this guy. So I love that relationship between them. And so, yeah, funny as hell, had a lot of heart. A couple of times, I'm like getting emotional. You know what I mean? So it got better as I got older. So yeah, even though it's still my least favorite of the three of them, but it's still like those movies get fives all across the board, though. You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
And yeah, that's all I gotta say about it, man. I love Last Crusade. Funny as
man.
fuck.
For me as a kid, it was a similar thing. I used to always love watching the first two. And I think it's because they're far more adventure heavy, right? I think the third film is far more of a story about a father and son. And it's got that adventure, it's got the action, it's got some cool elements, but it's not very heavy on action. It's not very heavy on violence and crazy stuff and like these insane antics. There's no jumping out of a plane with a raft, there's no surviving a nuke in a fridge. There's none of that. There's just a far more grounded story that has some ridiculous elements for sure. There's some funny, goofy parts. Like I love the scene where they're in that room that's on fire and they're trapped up together, and then they push themselves into the fireplace and it's like rotating where the bad guys are. So many moments like that are so funny. Sean Connery is fantastic in this film. I guess we should mention obviously Sean Connery as his father. Just so great. I mean, perfect casting. It's just such good casting in terms of his dad. doesn't really make sense, that his dad's got this, this accent, and that Harrison doesn't have one, but
Right.
whatever. You could look past that. Their relationship
Well,
is
kind of like
great.
Rob and his pops. You look at Rob and look at his pops. His pops talks with a heavy Jamaican accent.
That's
And Rob
true.
sounds
That's
like
true.
he's from Florida.
But right, but Rob can pull it out too, though. Rob, like when
Yeah.
Rob gets, real
when
spicy.
he gets pissed off, it comes out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was actually about to what's it called? I was about to ask about this. I was going to ask. Well, let's talk a little bit about the beginning of the movie. My dad mentioned
Okay.
River Phoenix playing young Indiana Jones.
Yes.
Imagine if River had lived. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Mhm.
I really enjoy that sequence. I always have. And because I also used to watch the Young Indiana Jones Adventures, which they actually recently put on Disney Plus, the whole series,
Right.
which I'm looking forward to going back and revisiting. That's a franchise that I would be excited if they ever decided to do something new with Indiana Jones, just like do like a young Indiana Jones thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like the best way to like put a new actor in the role without it disrupting what we already know. Just don't cast Alden Ehrenreich from Solo. Just
Don't get me started on him. Yeah.
no, I just want to see your reaction. I already know how my dad reacted because my dad hates that casting choice, which I wasn't a huge fan of it, but I've grown to enjoy it.
Right. But yeah,
one of the
facts. Yeah,
things,
River Phoenix did kill it though. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, River Phoenix. He was definitely a highlight of the movie. Like, as a matter of fact, when I first watched it, I was actually engaged in that whole scene. So the whole thing with the circus animals and all that, where he almost kept getting fucked up by the animals, I was into that. But then when it got to the Harrison Ford stuff, that's when it started getting boring. And I'm like, all right, let's get up out of here, man. It's just boring.
Well, it takes a little bit for the adventure to take off, right? Because there's a lot of talking about the Holy Grail, which is what they're going for in this movie, and like how they're gonna go about it, and this, that, and the third, and like it takes a little bit for the movie to pick up. It isn't until Indy is with his dad that things really start to pick up. One moment that I always love with him and his dad in this movie is when they both realize that they were sleeping with that chick Elsa.
Yeah.
And Indy feels like he's on top of his game, and then just to realize that he's essentially sloppy seconds for his dad.
You can't win, yo. When it comes to your pops, you can't win, man. You just can't. Like he's no matter how much you think you can be superior to your father as far as like strength and speed and getting chicks and shit, your pops is always gonna one up you, man. It's a sad reality. Now, my favorite scene in the movie was when my favorite moment between those two was when after your girl died trying to reach for the cup, and then when Indy tried to do the same thing as she did, he was like, "No, almost got it," and he was like, "Indiana, let it go." And I don't know, something about that just got me, man. Like the whole movie kept calling him Junior. He would never acknowledge him as Indiana. And then at that last moment, I guess he finally was like, he kicked in the dad mode, like, Indiana, let it go. And I'm like, oh shit, man. I don't know if for some reason that shit got me a little bit.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you 100%. I think that's where this movie for me is. I think unfortunately Temple of Doom over the years got knocked down enjoyment wise, maybe a little higher, but knocked down in terms of overall writing because Last Crusade has those moments. It's got the humor, but it's got the serious moments. But it's like that sequence for me. That story is the father and son story. And that full circle, from the opening scene with River Phoenix to the later sequence with his dad and him saying that, and the way he says it too. It's the way that Sean Connery delivers the line that just gives it all. Like him and Harrison Ford's performance in that scene. The only thing that kind of is like goofy to me when I watch that scene is just like the knight just being like, at the end, pretty much. Like it's just something about the. I honestly could have done without the knight in that movie altogether.
Right.
And I think it's because it comes down to like what I was talking about before. Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, did it perfectly, where you have a grounded story with grounded action and visuals and all that stuff that leads to this big moment, like a momentary big, just like it literally just one big moment. And then Temple of Doom just went way off in left field and went crazy with the big moment. But Last Crusade brings it back to what Raiders did. But then we just spend like the last like 15 minutes with this little ghost guy giving us like a whole spiel about how long he's been there. And I'm just like, I could have done without that, But at the same time, then there's the whole sequence with like, hey, which I always feel should have been a lot more tense. The one sequence that I wish was a little more tense was the which grail is it? Which cup is it that you're drinking from? Because they kind of figured like you already know the bad guy's like, oh, I'm gonna get in there, and then he dies instantly. It's like, of course, you didn't even. There's like 100 cups here, and you just chose one and went for it with pride, and you died, of course. And then Indy goes for it, and it's perfect. You know what I'm saying? It's like they could have added a little bit more tension there. But then I guess
and
the tension,
that's one thing that the movies do well. Also, is the tension building. So yeah, it's kind of surprising that the tension wasn't more in that because as ridiculous as those movies are, like even Temple of Doom, the whole where they were on the track, like that whole shit was like crazy. Like for some reason, you felt like, damn, could they possibly die on this shit?
right?
Yeah,
I love
and
that sequence too. That's a great sequence with the rail carts and stuff like that.
yeah.
So good. But then you get to the action sequence after that, and you have like that scene where like they throw the sledgehammer in the air, and it hits that one guy in the head, and you get like the Looney Tune sound like
Exactly.
Love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Last Crusade, a great time for me. Obviously, the finale of the Indiana Jones trilogy for a lot of people. That them walking off into the sunset,
Right.
a
It wrapped
pretty
up
perfect
perfectly.
ending. I would definitely say it's similar to Return of the Jedi. I honestly, you already know this. I am a fan of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. I like the books and the comics and the TV shows and the games that have gone past the original trilogy. I am a Star Wars fan in that way. But I knew it, and I hoped and I prayed that I knew there was no way, even long before The Rise of Skywalker came out, that they were ever going to be able to top the ending of Return of the Jedi. And
Right.
just because the way it makes you feel, it's the way it makes you feel, the closure. Because even with the prequels only add to that ending.
Facts.
And I don't think that The Rise of Skywalker's ending has nearly the same impact that arguably any of the original 6 Star Wars films.
Right.
Each of those films has an ending that even if you didn't like the movie, the ending is great for all of those. And then Return of the Jedi was perfect. So in a similar fashion, I think that The Last Crusade has a perfect ending.
Perfect ending, yes.
We didn't need another film, but the time has come to talk about the long awaited at the time film Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Arguably for some people, one of the worst films ever made. For most people, easily the weakest in the entire franchise. And for some, like yourself, it doesn't even exist.
Doesn't exist.
So just to give a little bit of backstory on my part, as I mentioned before in this video, Indiana Jones was without a doubt one of the most pivotal characters and stories and movies that just set up my love for film. The original 3 Indy films and the Star Wars films that came out when I was a kid, the first original 6, those films for me were everything. Those films were the reason I fell in love with movies, and I love that all those movies have George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and John Williams involved. You could tell where my love of film really launched. It was those guys, and I think they did that for a lot of people. Now, when it comes to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I was in high school when this movie came out. It came out in let me see what year, just to make sure.
Summer 2008.
2008, right? So I was in 9th grade. I want to say 9th grade or 10th grade. I can't even remember, something like that.
Damn.
And so I was excited, bro. When I tell you I was excited for this movie, a new Indiana Jones is coming out in my lifetime while I'm a kid that I can go to the theater and see. Like I felt so blessed at the time, so excited at the prospect of it, because it's just like when new Star Wars started coming out, like The Force Awakens. I was the hype leading up to The Force Awakens there will never be a Star Wars project that was as hyped as that moment was, because of the excitement around Star Wars returning. And for me, it was like
even Phantom Menace.
Well, I'm talking about since then.
Since then. Okay. Gotcha.
I think now with everything that we've gotten, the amount of Star Wars stuff that we get, I don't think there will ever be another moment that hits
the hype. Level. Okay, gotcha.
And I think that I would almost argue too that The Force Awakens maybe had a little bit more hype at a certain point than The Phantom Menace, simply because the internet's a bigger thing now than it was when The Phantom Menace was coming out, and all the fans who grew up on the original trilogy and all the fans who from my generation who grew up on the prequels, everybody was hyped for The Force Awakens. Everybody and their mother was hyped. And it just became this huge thing. But similarly for me, it was obviously the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was not even on the same level. But I remember the hype. I remember the excitement. People were excited about a new Indiana Jones film. And I'll never forget that I went to go see it, and I loved it. I came out of the theater super excited. You know, I'm a teenager. I was so
Mm.
hyped. I think it was just because I got to see a new Indiana Jones film. And then I'll never forget that I told my dad that I really loved the film. And then I went with my dad a second time to go watch it. It was his first time. And the
Yeah.
movie ended and he was like, and that was bad. And I was
Like,
like,
nah,
what?
that ain't
No.
it.
And I remember like I denied it. But I will say this, despite all of that,
Mhm.
I am a fan of this movie, and I think part of it is that I just enjoy it for what it is, right? If we're
Yeah.
looking at it on a star scale, like I said before, the first three films for me are 5 stars movies. I give
Mhm.
this a solid 3.5 stars. For me, this is a good time. It's enjoyable. There's some laughs to be had. I think it connects to the previous films in some fun ways, especially with Raiders of the Lost Ark, specifically because you have Marion that returns, of course,
Mhm.
and yeah, Shia LaBeouf in the film as Indy's son, which I would argue I like Shia LaBeouf as an actor. He's done a lot of really great movies, especially as he's gotten
Mhm.
older. He's a little crazy in some ways. He seems like he's a little bit out there in some ways, but he gives really good performances as he started getting older. At this time, this was his Transformers era, but
Mhm.
I rewatching the film, I still really enjoy his performance. I think he looks like Harrison Ford too, so he sells it for me that he's the son. I think there's just some story choices around his character and around the entire movie. Did I need him swinging with like Tarzan with a bunch of CG monkeys? No. Did I need an
Yeah.
alien at the end of the movie to explode Kate Blanchett's head? No. There's a scene where multiple people get eaten by swarms of ants. It's just there's just like
Yeah.
scenes in this movie that are just ridiculous. The multiple gophers that pop out of the ground throughout the course of this film, especially at the beginning of the movie. The CGI on top of the car sword fight, that they have in the
Yeah.
middle of the
Yeah.
jungle. Just really a lot of it has to come down to the visual effects of this film that just feel disconnected from the other movies. The other films, like we said, were so practical. They're so practical. And while this film still utilizes some practical effects, and I didn't even mention the nuke in the fridge thing because we've already talked about it a couple times,
Mhm.
but there are so many moments in this movie that just like ask you to suspend your disbelief time after time after time after time in a way that binging these, like I hadn't binged all the Indiana Jones films in
Mhm.
quite so many years. Binging
Yeah.
them back to back from the first three into Crystal Skull, they just they just took the wrong notes from where modern cinema was at the time in terms
Mhm.
of CGI. And to think that this movie came out um, a year before Avatar is kind of hilarious. Um,
Shit, it did, didn't it? Yeah.
yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of crazy to think about. So all that to say, we're gonna get into the cast and we're gonna talk about the story a little bit more.
Mhm.
But I want to hear your thoughts on it. But I do like this movie. I don't think it's as terrible as people say it is, but it is without a doubt the worst one of the bunch.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I can't judge you too bad because one of the things I hate to admit, and I shouldn't really say this out loud, but I was in high school when I saw Batman and Robin, and because I was a big Batman fan, when I walked out of the theater, I thought Batman and Robin was the greatest movie of all time. Okay. So, because bro, I was a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. You know, I was into like lifting weights and stuff. So Arnold was my guy, and to me, Arnold could do no wrong. So the fact I saw him as Mister Freeze, I'm like, God, this is the best movie ever. And now years later, it's like one of the most hated movies of all time. So I can understand that, bro. When you're a teenager, you don't know any better. Um,
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice
the
Age.
Ice Age, sing, sing, sing. You know. So yeah, Crystal Skull. At this time, I'm a grown ass man, got a family and shit. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to the movies as much. So when I do go to the movies, it's kind of an event. It's a big deal. So I actually saw Crystal Skull for the first time bootleg at my homeboy's house. Right. So I had no excitement with this movie because I'm like, dude, like three ended so perfectly. So my first reaction was, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we making another one? I know Spielberg and Lucas not hard up for money. Like, why are we doing this shit? Sorry, my allergies are kicking in.
No, you good, bro.
So I watched it at my homeboy's house, right? Bootleg, and I struggled to get through it. Okay, like you said, this is Transformers era Shia LaBeouf. So Sam Witwicky is now a badass in a leather coat. He's supposed to be James Dean or something. You know, he's riding a motorcycle. He's talking shit. He's a tough guy. I said Sam Witwicky is a tough guy. Hell no. I'd never bought it for a second. Okay. The first three movies, the absurdity, I get it. But now you take that absurdity and you make it a Looney Tunes cartoon. All right. They're like, at least Raiders had some balance. Temple of Doom, okay, even though, yeah, but still, Temple of Doom was that. When there's no enjoyability, like I said earlier, when a film and the characters don't grip you, it's easier to see all the flaws. When I saw the flaws, I did not like what I saw. And I'm like, dude, even drunk, I would not touch this chick with a 10-foot pole, not even after 10 locos. Okay. So I'm trying to think of anything I like about the movie. To see Marianne come back, it was good to see her back. Harrison Ford, as always, is Indy. Can't lose with him, but the movie was just shit. Okay. I think this is a perfect example of what Quentin Tarantino was talking about, where he said he only wanted to make, I think, 9 films because he says over time, filmmakers don't get better with age, and if anything, this is a perfect example of that, how Spielberg, the Jaws and JP, and made me cry like a little bitch at ET, okay, and we go from that to this. I wish my son was here. Pop your pressure. I know. Fuck this movie, man. I don't like anything about it.
That's crazy, man. I mean, listen, I can't take that away from you, right? But
Yeah.
I think for me, I like the adventure of it. I like the idea that they're going after this crystal skull and discovering that it's not the crystal skull that they think it is, and discovering that there's aliens. I believe that there's aliens in real life, so I don't know what I don't believe that they're like, they look like this, the big, white Martian looking, big headed, big eye thing. But I like the idea of a good alien adventure. Kate Blanchett as the villain. Think she's pretty great. I really enjoy her in the role. I think
I forgot she was in this. Yeah, okay. I guess I can give her that.
Yeah, I think she's pretty solid. I think there's some fun action sequences in here, but I will say this, where I think that the action sequences kind of lose themselves is that overutilization of CGI. As we were talking about before with Raiders and these other films, there are so many moments where you have this again, you have like Indy jumping from vehicle to vehicle. It's all caught in camera, and there's like scenes where he's like literally falling off the side of a car, and like the one where he's on the side of like in between the tank and the wall, and he's like, it's so well done and so practical and gritty and grounded. And then I think of a scene from like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull where they're literally sword fighting and fencing on top of 2 cars driving in the middle of this like lush jungle. Like they should be crashing into trees and rocks and all kinds of crap, but they're just driving perfectly straight, and then everything around them is just CG, and it looks fake. It just looks so. I think if the movie, I've always said this, I think a movie that is heavy with CG tonally has to fit that vibe. Like when I watch a movie that has cartoony CGI, I can forgive it as long as it feels tonally like it makes sense within that world. And
like
I think the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. What was I said?
I said like the Flash.
Right. And like I think the visual effects of that movie could have definitely been better in a lot of areas for sure. Like some of it's not great. But the movie, I can at least just be like, okay, this is the Flash. Like this is a dude that runs super fast. He's goofy. Like it's like when I watch a Spider-Man movie. Like we have a lot of great Spider-Man movies with great visual effects. But if I watch one that has some hokey effects, like I'm never really bothered about it because it's a dude in freaking red and blue spandex that says like funny quippy lines, like and swings around like a spider. Like it's certain things I think kind of call for a certain tone, or like a cartoony like vibe to it. And I just don't think this movie has that, so that's where it does lose me for sure, a lot of the visual effects. But at the same time, there's also some great visual effects. There's also a great use of practical effects and costume design, set design. I think one of the best sequences in this whole movie is the entire sequence where Indiana and his son Mutt, one of the first scenes that they first meet, when they're escaping from those Nazis in the middle of that whole like little town, and they're he's on the motorcycle, and they're swerving through buildings and stuff like that, and they had to make it all look like back in that day. And I think they did a great job with the set design and the locations used, the vehicles, and I think that there's a lot of that Steven Spielberg magic in this movie, but it's in sequences versus like the whole picture where you're just like lost, where kind of like you said, you can have a movie that's ridiculous and stupid, but you can just buy into all of that because the movie has that enjoyability factor, has the charm. And I think that this one just definitely lacks that charm. But when people really hate on it, yeah, I just struggle with it, man. Because every time I watch it, I'm just like, man, I'm still into this. I'm still having a good time. I don't like it as much as the other ones for sure, but I think there's definitely enjoyment to be had.
Well, let me ask you. Let me ask you. Do you think? Because I know Lucas went through a time where he like CG was the answer to everything, and maybe that's because of the probably still reoccurring nightmares he has after working on Star Wars and the struggles he had working on that original trilogy, which we all know and love. But for him, like the guy lost, he lost years off of his life making those movies. So, but the technology finally caught up to his vision. They answered everything with CG. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
do you think there was some kind of, I don't want to say conflict, but because Spielberg, like when you watch Jurassic Park, Spielberg, he knows what he's doing, blending practical and CG and making it seamless. You know what I'm saying? Like you watch Jurassic Park to this day, it still looks seamless where the CG blends with the practical.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so do you think there was some kind of like with George? I don't know about this. It looks like no. Trust me, because it's easier than having them actually on fucking tanks. Forget that. I'm done with this practical shit. Try to figure these stunts out. Let's just do it. Just do everything CG. So
I think it was a weird time in the film industry overall. You still saw movies that used a lot of practical locations for action sequences and stuff, but there are so many movies of this time. And Star Wars really was what did it, like they set people make fun of the prequels, but it's so funny to me, like looking back all the time. George Lucas set the precedent for a blockbuster film with Star Wars in 1977. It changed the game of what was possible with stop motion animation and costume design and set design and locations used and using places on Earth that kind of have like an otherworldly kind of vibe to them to tell a story in them. Just completely pivotal for the film industry. And then nearly 20 years later, after the Return of the Jedi, he did the same thing with the prequels, except CGI just wasn't it just wasn't where it would be like, literally 10 years after he releases, it's just crazy. 10 years after he releases The Phantom Menace, something like Avatar comes out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
And every movie from 2000 till today, now we're, what's funny is that now we're in this time where studios and artists and movie goers or our filmmakers and stuff are wanting to do a lot more things practically. They want to use practical locations again far more because there was a season in film where it became like, well, we can do anything with this special effects stuff, and some movies nailed it. Like look at Avatar. Like that movie is a phenomenon for what was possible, but a lot of movies overutilized it to the point where we got some movies that they just now I will say this, certain movies though found a balance or found the correct tone. Some movies that always get crapped on all the time that I really enjoy are those original Fantastic Four movies that came out.
Yeah.
And I think for me, part of why I enjoy them so much is because they completely capture that tone that I watched in the Fantastic Four cartoons back in the day, the comic books. They're a hokey group. They're the Marvel's first family, like they're cheesy. They're cheesy on their own. Those effects haven't aged today, but at the time, it being so cartoony fit the tone of the film.
Fit it. Yeah, exactly.
And I think that, when it comes back to Star Wars, George had a good balance. Thankfully, those movies have now stood this test of time. Some people can say what they want, but people like the prequels. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
there is a fan base for them, and they obviously spawned the Clone Wars and all this other stuff. But yeah, George had this time. Well, I was just gonna say George had this time where he went back and did the special editions and added Jabba in there, this terrible CGI that we have to watch every time now. Every time you watch A New Hope on Disney Plus, you're gonna see Harrison Ford do that little edited step on it looks terrible,
Yeah.
Or even like switching out Lopty Neck in Return of the Jedi for Jedi Rocks, Lopty Neck was the original song. It was the best. And then now you got this guy.
Yeah, I hated that. I hate I said, bring that disco track back in there.
Right. But I mean, maybe that was the case with George, like maybe giving him some pointers there, but I just feel like that's where the film industry was.
That's
but
where
then
it was at the time, yeah.
Spielberg would in the next couple of years do some other like big heavy CG films that just again that captured the tone a little bit better. He ended up doing a movie called the BFG. I think it's called like the Big Friendly Giant or whatever. Not the greatest movie, but it tonally like it matched the the visual aesthetic of the film, like the tone of the film. You were gonna say something though. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what the fuck was I gonna say? Damn, man, that's the old man brain kicking in. Um, but yeah, yeah, because I remember even 2002, if you remember, Spielberg released, I guess, the 20-year anniversary of ET, where he
Right.
had the updated version, and then he also had the original theatrical version. I wanted to take that new version he had, and I wanted to snap it in half and throw it away. What, like, dog, he
Yeah.
replaced like 80% of the puppetry with the damn CG, and it just totally just takes you out
It
of the movie.
it ruined it. That's a perfect example of completely ruining it. Like, you can say what you want about like the Star Wars prequels and the CG
Yeah,
there, sure. But those
yeah,
movies were made with that CG in mind. You know what I'm
hmm
saying? So like it's still for me tonally all fits. You know what I'm saying? Like
right,
it all
right,
fits. The original trilogy, there's just no getting around it when they added CG in the movie, especially for the time. If they
hmm
told me today, hey, we're gonna re-special edition the special edition changes just to give it some bit of a better look to it, I'd
right.
be like, please, just do that.
Yeah,
Please,
just
I
do
would
that.
love
Yeah,
that because the CGI that George added to the original trilogy was just not good. Like it just
especially
doesn't.
especially in New Hope. Yeah, especially in
It
New Hope, man.
it
That
looks
shit was.
worse. It looks
Yeah.
worse than anything that's in the Phantom Menace or
hmm
in any of the prequels. Like it looks substantially worse,
Right,
especially
and
with Jabba the Hutt and freaking A New Hope.
yeah,
But yeah,
and
that
and
that
I
movie was
remember I
very good.
remember when Attack of the Clones first came out, because okay, when Phantom Menace came out, right, George was saying that like that's the last time he was gonna do in film, right? He said he's switching to digital. So I
Right,
think at the time when Attack of the Clones came out, people weren't ready for a fully digital film like that. So I remember the criticism when that movie came out. It was like, yo, this looks like a PlayStation game. Like, why does this shit look like a cartoon? But at the time it didn't bother me. Like I was just happy to see Star Wars. But I remember a lot of people around me saying that it looks like a cartoon, looks like a PlayStation 2 game or something like that. Because he
right,
said he thought digital was the future, film is dead, and that's where him and Spielberg kind of clash, because Spielberg is on the opposite end of that. Spielberg like, no, 30, like I like shooting in 35 millimeter, like this film. We have to shoot on film. And George's like, no, no,
right.
no, no, just shoot everything digital. Like it is, digital is the future. And I guess it depends on the movie,
And he
though.
was right, man. And that's the
Yeah,
crazy part is like that's the thing about George Lucas is people always criticized him at every step. But I guess that just shows that goes that's why he has the legacy as a filmmaker he does.
hmm
I think the worst part is he got his flowers, but
right.
he always felt pushed. He always felt ostracized by
hmm
the fans and by viewers.
Yeah,
Outside of the original the original trilogy, and even in the original trilogy, there was a little bit of saltiness there. You can tell because the typically everybody's favorite is Empire Strikes Back,
right.
um, which George he directed the first one, but he didn't direct the second one. So when the second one
hmm
came out, and everybody's like, "This is the best thing ever. And this is
Yeah,
better than the first one." George often says it's his least favorite of the original trilogy.
really.
Um,
Empire Strikes Back is his least favorite.
I believe so, and I
Oh
think part
wow.
of it has to be like the success that the film had,
Right,
like
right.
with him not the director, even though he still wrote it and he still like everything is still
hmm
him. But um, yeah, man, and then when the prequels came out, people I'll never forget the amount of jokes people made about him doing filming everything on blue and green screens and like
hmm
this, that, and the third. Every movie is filmed that way now. Every
Yeah,
film, and in the next
everything.
decade after he did those movies, it was done like that forever. And they were writing the code for motion capture for characters with Jar Jar Binks. And then
Right.
it wasn't really perfected, but they did it. And then a couple years later, Lord of the Rings comes out and perfects it pretty much with Gollum. Just
Yeah.
completely taking that technology to the next level. And it's just like George Lucas was always on that filmmaking path of doing something different and new. And
Different. Yeah.
now all the like auteurs want to be like you have to film on 17 millimeter and like I'm all for that. I love a film filmed
yeah.
on actual film, but George did set the precedent for digital film, and it was followed for a long time. For a long
But I
time,
mean, hey, but that's one of the prices you pay. What's that saying? No good deed goes unpunished. When you're an innovator, when you're like the first to do something, that like you're like steps ahead of everybody else, you're gonna get some hate for that, man. It happens.
right? Well,
But
that's why he sold Star Wars, which breaks my heart to this day. He sold it
yeah,
because I think deep down, like he felt like he even said that he was not going to work on, he was going to make films for himself.
right,
I don't
right.
know that
I
I
heard
don't
him
know
say
that
that.
I don't know if he's done any of it, but he said he was going to make films for himself because he
hmm
just felt like audiences didn't care about what he had to put out there, and then he sold the Star Wars, and he said he was going to be on there as like somebody to kind of help,
consultant or whatever.
a
Yeah.
consultant. And then they
Mhm.
decided to go a different route from what he wanted to do, and so he stepped away from it for the most part. He's shown up here and there, like on the sets of a couple of shows, mainly the stuff Dave Filoni's working on, since he's like his protege. But like, yeah, he's kind of, he has a bit of he's a little salty about it, understandably so.
Bit,
but like, he doesn't. I truly believe had George Lucas just decided to make those Star Wars movies himself, I mean, he would have made so much money.
Right.
You know what I mean? If he was like, "Hey, I'm going to do Episode 7 myself," everybody would have shit their pants and lost their mind.
Yeah. I mean, but most likely the way if George would have did it, he would have did another trilogy. People would have been talking shit about it as always, and then 10 years later, it'd have been appreciated. That's just the way. That's just where the cookie crumbles.
That's just Star Wars, man. Like
that's
at this point, that's when I hear people talking about that with like the Mandalorian or all these different things. You might have your gripes on it, but 10 or 15 years out, people are gonna be like, "Yo, you remember the Mandalorian?" Like, and everybody's gonna be hyped about it. It's like, wow, where the hell were you when it was on TV? But anyway,
but I brought that up to say, with Indy 4, probably the reason why it didn't work is maybe George and Spielberg weren't on the same page as far as because Spielberg's more of a conventional, film director, and George is more thinking of, okay, how can we? I don't want to do what's now. I want to do what's in the future.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
that's true, man.
Was there a clash there?
Even with the new Star Wars movies, that was something he said. Like, it was one of the things he did say was that, like, I'm just not seeing anything new here.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a good impression.
Nothing that pushes it forward.
That's a good impression, man.
Yeah, that was what he was always up about, man. But hey, man, listen, I won't take too much more of your time. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I think it goes without saying, is the weakest of the bunch. I do think, though, there's some fun action sequences. I think Harrison Ford is great in the role again. It's great to see Marion as a character return. I do like Shia LaBeouf in this movie, and the movie ends with, the promise. He putting the hat on.
Yeah, he takes it. That's probably the best part of the whole movie.
He's about to put it on, and then he takes it and puts it back on himself. Yeah, that's a great sequence. There was promise in this film, and I think it's definitely not as bad as people make it out to be. I enjoy it every time I watch it. But yeah, man. Any closing thoughts on your end?
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull to me is like, this is the Rocky V of the franchise. This is Godfather 3 of the franchise. This is the holiday special of the franchise. What other? This is like the Exorcist 2 of the franchise. Let me see. Can I continue? There was really no bad Rambo movies. This was the black sheep. Okay, the redheaded stepchild. That only if you're. I mean, I think I'm a hardcore fan of this series, but I think really the hardcore of the hardcore fans are gonna be like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Like, Rocky V. Like, I don't like Rocky V, but I can appreciate it just because it's a Rocky movie. You know what I mean? So I will never defend it, but at the same time, I just have a soft place in my heart for Rocky V because it's a Rocky movie. So as an Indiana Jones fan, I can understand. Okay, yeah, but for me, Kobe in the trash.
So even after all this, you still don't acknowledge that there's 4 Indiana Jones films, only 3?
All right, I want you to look at these 3 little stubby fingers. 3. All right, there's only 3.
That's great, man.
It's like a lot of times even though Godfather 3, I kind of shit on that one, but I only acknowledge really the 2 Godfather films. 3 almost doesn't count. If it wasn't for Al Pacino's performance in that movie, 3 wouldn't count.
I got to do a rewatch of those, man, because that's
Godfathers,
like, yeah. I mean, I've seen them. I saw the first one a couple years back in like at a theater. They had like a screening, and I forgot how slow that movie is. It's still a great movie.
It's a very slow burn.
It's so slow, man. I was watching. I was like, Jesus Christ, this thing is slow.
And 2 is even a slower burn because 2 is a longer movie. It burns slower, but 2 just goes like really deep into the shit. And then 3. God, you got old Al Pacino with a flat top. You got incest. Just a lot of weird shit in that 3rd movie, man. Where an opera scene that took fucking forever. Watch 3. I mean, it's worth watching to say you watch Godfather 3, but I wouldn't put it up there as the best of them.
Yeah. No way. That much I remember from watching it back in the day. But yeah, man, listen, dude, thank you so much for joining me today. Everybody who watched, obviously we've just been sitting here rambling. This hasn't been a full breakdown of every little thing and every character and every sequence. But hey, man, it's been a lot of fun talking about Indiana Jones. I think it goes without saying that we are fans of this character and this franchise, despite the things we don't like. I'm excited. Just a few days from now, the new movie releases, Dial of Destiny. I can't wait to see it. You guys can find a review for it here on the channel, and hopefully Rashad will also check it out so that he can have a review over on his channel that you guys can check out, even if he hates it just as much as Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so that we can have his son say that his pressure is going up. Whatever the case may be. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, will this be the first time where I will watch everybody's review before I shoot mine? Because usually I like to watch the movie, shoot mine first, and then watch yours. But in this case, I'm gonna watch your review first, and if you give it a dope ass review, I might just go watch it. But
well, I mean, who knows? Based on how I reviewed this Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, you might have some disagreements. My dad calls it the Die Hard 4 and 5 of the franchise.
Thank you, Pops. We here. All right.
Exactly. But yeah, man, thank you so much. I really appreciate you just taking the time to talk indie with me. Always a blast. I'm hyped for the new movie. If it doesn't live up to my expectations, man, that's okay. If it's as good as Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, at least for me, then I'm not having a bad time. I'll still enjoy it. It just won't be as good as those original three. Those original films, this is the thing. I don't expect Dial of Destiny to be anywhere close to as good as the first three Indiana Jones films. And my dad does not count Godfather 3.
Well, there's a couple of, moments in there, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. I think Al Pacino has on record the longest cry that I've ever seen in a movie, where, the scene where, his daughter gets, and he has that long ass, like, I've never seen that in a movie before, bro. You see kids do that when they get their ass beat. I've never seen a grown ass man do that in a movie, bro.
Yeah, you're not lying, dude. I gotta give those movies a rewatch. At some point, I've always, that's the beauty about doing a YouTube channel and talking about movies, is that there's no shortage. I'm right. Just now, after all these years, getting to Indiana Jones and talking about it on the channel to some capacity, and yeah, like without a doubt, these are some of the most pivotal films in my entire life. Right. Even though the fourth one isn't the greatest in my opinion, it came out at such a great time for me as well. Like I said, I was in high school. I was so hyped that we're getting a new Indiana Jones film, and I'll never lose that feeling that I had at that time. Even if I can watch the movie today and be like, yeah, it's definitely the weakest of the bunch. I still count it. There are 4 Indiana Jones films, but the first 3 just so happen to be substantially better. Like the first 3 just so happen to be perfect films, and the fourth one just so happens to be a fun time. So it's a big drop off, but
the fourth one's Tito Jackson. Okay, he's the Jackson that nobody cares about. Okay, yeah. What 1, 2, and 3 are like Michael, Jermaine, and what's the other one? Janet, I guess. The 3 Jacksons everybody knows. Okay, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is Randy Jackson. Nobody knows who Randy Jackson is. That's it, and that's all.
Speaking of that's it and that's all, I'll go ahead and pass it off really quickly to you. Let everybody know what they can find over on your channel, what you're working on, what to expect soon, and all that. Like I said, the link to his channel is down below in the description box.
All right, appreciate that, bro. Yeah, Rashad G Reviews. Yeah, so like Perez said, I talk movies, shows, whatever comes in this crazy brain of mine, whatever I feel like reviewing. So tonight, actually, whenever we get done with the stream, I'm going to shoot a review for a movie I just seen on Tubi. And I know you like Tubi. Yeah, Tubi, the place to go to watch dumb, cheesy movies that make you just question your life. But I actually saw a really good movie on there, and I have to talk about it. So it's called Cinnamon. It's like kind of like a callback to the blaxploitation era with a little bit of Tarantino in there. Mostly Jackie Brown. Pam Grier is also in the movie. So I'm going to be shooting a review for that once I get done here. And I just been also searching for those hidden black gems that people really don't know about. So for some reason, I just been on a mission to find those small black films that, because everybody knows are like Coffee and Foxy Brown and Superfly and all that. But what about those ones that came out around that same time that were just as good, but nobody knows about? So that's like my search, my quest. So I've been doing those as well. And nice, that's pretty much what I got going on right now.
Awesome, dude. Well, hell yeah. Everybody go give his channel some love. As far as for myself, Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, I'll be watching that on Thursday. Hopefully get my review up later that night. I am going to be doing I have some more Land Before Time videos dropping for anybody who cares about those. Looking forward to dropping those. Almost done with the franchise, 14 movies. It's been an endeavor. Yeah, I know. I'm not taking on any franchise this big for quite some time.
We still got our Harry Potter joints too. We got to finish.
Yeah, we got Harry Potter to wrap up. I'm wrapping up Jaws, and then on my own, without a guest, I'm starting the Shrek franchise. So I have a video for Shrek and the first Puss in Boots dropping in the next couple of days as well.
Okay.
And then this coming later this weekend, I will also be dropping my first early screener for BET for a movie called Call Her King. So I've never had
never heard of that one.
Yeah, it's coming out on BET Plus or something, and they sent me a screener. I feel like there's going to be a portion of the audience that's like, "What's this white boy talking about a BET movie for early?" But I'm gonna be doing it. But anyway, big thanks to all of you guys for watching. Really appreciate everybody. Any final words on your end, my friend?
What's that you pop said at the end here? We're Cuban, and I didn't like Andy Garcia being head of the Corleone family. Actually, okay, he was actually the highlight. Well, he was the highlight of the movie to me. All right, I didn't know. I didn't even know Andy Garcia was Cuban at the time. Just like when I saw Scarface, I didn't know that Al Pacino was Italian. You know,
yeah. Well, I could tell you, being Hispanic myself and having grown up in Miami, that accent is terrible. It's iconic. It's iconic, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
But man, the accent is terrible. There's times he says stuff that's just so fun. It's so bad that it's just hilarious. Like having grown up around so many Cuban people, it's just like the accent he's doing is pretty bad. But what's funny about it is growing up in Miami as well. Can't tell you how many people's houses I went to that had like Godfather like posters on the wall or not, Scarface posters on the wall.
Scarface was large, bro.
It was large, but it's just so funny that down there amongst the Cubans and just in Miami, that there were so many Cubans that love Scarface, even though they'll tell you immediately, "Oh yeah, the accent's terrible."
The accent was terrible. But that just goes to show how great of an actor Al Pacino is. He pulled it off, man. And like you Pop said, I had no idea Andy Garcia was Cuban. I thought he was Italian. And to me, well, I did say Pacino saved the movie, but yeah, Andy Garcia also, I think, saved the movie because he made, he gave it that gangster flavor that it needed. Because Godfather 3, I'm wrapping up, but Godfather 3, Al Pacino's like, he's a broken down man who did so much bad shit in his life. He's like trying to redeem himself. So he's nowhere near as gangster as he was in the first two movies. He's just he's an old man. He's a shell of himself. But Andy Garcia's character represents that gangster shit that Godfather needs. So actually, I like his performance, but I can see where your pops is coming from. Like, dude, this dude's playing the head of the mafia family. Like, fuck out of here. I get it. I get it.
Well, on that note, we'll see all you beautiful people on the next one. Rashad's channel is down below in the description box. Go give him some love. Check out all those videos he's got coming out. Looking forward to seeing your thoughts on that movie, Cinnamon, I think you said. So definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Leave any and all comments down below. Content coming very soon, and more live streams just like this coming very soon too. Bye, guys.